There's a British hostage. What's your message to his family?
Well, one of huge sympathy and understanding. I think everyone watching this programme will be thinking of them and praying for them. It's a desperately difficult situation. And what I would say is that when anyone from Britain is taken hostage anywhere in the world, I immediately make sure that the whole government comes together, the intelligence agencies, our security forces, everything, to ask what we can do to help get that person back, to help their family, to make sure the whole system is working on their behalf. But it is a very difficult situation, and of course they have our complete sympathies.
Can you conceive of paying a ransom in this case?
We don't pay ransoms. We have a very clear policy that we don't pay ransoms to terrorists when they kidnap our citizens. And I, at the G8 in Northern Ireland, got other world leaders to sign up to this very important declaration. And it's important people stick to it, because I'm in no doubt that this particular terrorist organisation and others around the world have made tens of millions of dollars from people who have paid ransoms. And that money goes into kidnapping more citizens from European countries. It goes into buying weapons and arms. And it also goes into terrorist plots, including plots against our own country. So this is the right policy. It is a difficult decision, but it's the right thing to do.
You're blaming our European partners partly for this kidnap?
Well, what I would say is Britain doesn't pay for terrorist kidnaps. On other occasions, payments have been made. Sometimes I think governments have turned a blind eye, and I think that is deeply regrettable. As I say, from the intelligence and other information I've seen, there's no doubt this money helps to fuel the crisis that we see in Iraq and Syria.
We've seen a certain ramping up of the rhetoric over the past couple of days about IS, you call it ISIL. Is this a slow drumbeat towards war, towards more concerted military action?
What it is a recognition that this is an organisation that is a direct threat to our country. I mean, if we think about what happened in Afghanistan, there we had a Taliban regime that played host to al-Qaeda. Here in the heart of Iraq, we've actually got a terrorist organisation running a potential state with all the resources and money that involves. So, look, we have to take a long-term, tough, intelligent, patient view of this. We're going to have to squeeze it out of existence. It's going to take time. We start with the measures we take in our own country to keep ourselves safe. We then work with partners to put the pressure on this organisation. We're helping to get arms to the Kurds. We're helping to get an Iraqi government whose real responsibility it is to put the squeeze on this organisation. And then we work with allies and partners to ask what more we can do.
You use the phrase "put the squeeze." Is the aim to destroy IS? Is that your aim?
No, yes, no doubt. The world would be a safer place if we could squeeze this organisation out of existence. What there ought to be in Iraq is a democratic Iraqi government that looks after all of its people, Sunni, Shia and Kurd. What there ought to be in Syria, instead of a conflict between a brutal dictator and an opposition, is a democratic government in Syria that can represent all its people. In the long term, those are the only answers. It's a mixture of the action we take and political solutions on the ground.
But you cannot deal with IS without targeting their HQ in Syria. And how do you do that with President Assad, or without his tacit support?
Well, as I say, what we need is that combination of working with those on the ground who are fighting ISIL in Iraq, that is the Kurds and the Iraqi government. In Syria, it's the official Syrian opposition. We need to work with them, obviously. We also need to engage with the regional partners and players. Some sort of Western intervention that goes over their heads and leaves them to pick up the pieces, that won't work.
Any engagement with President Assad?
I think President Assad is part of the problem, not part of the solution. If you ask yourself, why has so-called Islamic State arisen, I would say it's got two main causes. The cause of Assad brutalizing his own people without a stronger official opposition to stand up for them, and the failure of an Iraqi government to govern for all its people. Wherever in the world you have broken states and conflict, this poisonous narrative of Islamist extremism is able to get a foothold. We see that in Somalia, we see it in Afghanistan, and now, tragically, we see it in Iraq and Syria.
Prime Minister, I detect a kind of combat weariness following on from the Syria vote, following on from the great debates about Iraq over the past 10, 11 years. Is Britain combat weary? compared to where we were?
I wouldn't accept that. I mean, as Prime Minister, I've been prepared to take action where it's in our national interest and where we can achieve our goals. And that's what we did in Libya, where we prevented a humanitarian catastrophe, where Gaddafi was going to slaughter people in Benghazi.
You're leading from the back here. You're not wanting to get ahead of public opinion.
I think we do need to learn the lessons of the past. And I think one of those lessons is that if you intervene over the heads of local people, then you're less likely to be successful. Here, the question we should ask ourselves is what more can we do to help those who are fighting the so-called Islamic State on the ground, the Kurds and the Iraqi government? That is the approach we've taken so far, and we should build on that approach rather than seek to overturn it.
One last quick domestic question. Are you confident still about Scotland? Will we be paying more visits up there given the tightening of the polls?
Well, obviously, it is a vitally important question for the future of our United Kingdom and for the future of everyone living in Scotland. I've played my role in the campaign. I'll be making other interventions in that campaign. I was discussing it yesterday, and I hope people will really focus now on the risks there are of separation and focus instead on the bright future we have, I believe, as part of the family of nations of the United Kingdom. Scots, in my view, have the chance of the best of both worlds, more government from Edinburgh, more devolution to Edinburgh, but while being part of a bigger United Kingdom.
It's extraordinary, though, isn't it? The last time the UK hosted this, Margaret Thatcher, one of your heroes, was hosting it, and it was the end of the Cold War. And now we face the worst relations with Russia in a generation.
Well, you could look at it another way, which is it demonstrates the importance of this NATO alliance. It has helped to keep the peace in Europe for over 60 years, and it is as relevant today as it was when Margaret Thatcher had that vital conference last time in Britain. That's why I was keen to bring this conference again here to Britain, because NATO is not part of our past. It's actually vital to make sure we keep peace and security in Europe, and we combat these threats like Islamist extremism around the world.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister.
Thank you.